Good morning. So, let's get to it. Today we're gonna talk about communication. Well, I've already talked about communication, but this is a little bit of a different take on things. So, one of the things that you will learn very quickly when you start talking to clients or when you're starting to, basically have stakeholders, because usually what happens is that as you it's not supposed to be that way, and a lot of companies will tell you otherwise, but what usually happens when you start as a developer or a programmer is that you have a ramp up period. You basically get to learn all like the bolts and the nuts and like all of the stuff that goes on in the company, and after you have a little bit of more seniority, if you will, more experience and so forth, the company will feel more and more comfortable with you talking to stakeholders. Now, it's not always the case for every company, but it's very, very common that you sooner or later need to actually talk to people. Like some of you may have to do that immediately, and that's a good thing, because the thing is that the industry is waging a little bit of a war, I would say, on introverts. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing to be an introvert, but I do think it's a bad thing to basically be afraid. I think it's fear. Fear is a useful tool to make us stronger, but if you let your fear get in the way of you talking to people and so forth, then I highly recommend that you start thinking about things that you can do to solve that, because you will have to talk to people in general, unless you're a super genius programmer of some sort, where basically they put you in your own little piece of the company and you just sit there, and maybe that's your thing. I don't know, but it's very rare. For the most part, it's a very social profession. Now, the reason why I wanted to touch on communication is because when you start building things, you will very quickly realize that when you ask the question, so what do you need? Nobody can answer you, for the most part. It's very rare, actually, that people know what they want. In general, that's the case. It's actually found, which I found amazing, is that people who, like, if you have an app ID or a product or anything like that, you can never basically just ask a person, okay, what's missing in your life? Because the question is, it's too broad, it's too big. And frankly, most people simply realize what they want when they see it. That's why I argue that a lot of people who are like truly creative people, per my definition, are the type of people who can take a white piece of paper and create something from that, or start with absolutely nothing and build something. That's not the case for most people. Most people need building blocks or something to start with. That's actually why I believe that, The Sims and such games where you basically have or Lego for that matter, these products get very popular because they allow you to be creative with a little bit of help, basically. So, the first and fundamental thing you need to learn is to listen to people in a way that makes you realize what it is that they're actually looking for. Because for the most part, you have to help them. That's actually I would argue probably one of the things that is the most frustrating and most challenging for designers, because usually the designers and the UX people are the first line of defense in this little war. It's not a war, but basically they are faced with the challenge of trying to help the clients who are paying for the thing. Like, the clients usually have like a really rough idea what they want, but it's up to the designers and the UX guys to kind of just build something and then present it to have that dialogue going with the client to figure out what this is that they actually want. And for the most part, that's the dialogue that you're going to have. So I highly recommend that you start learning how to get a feel for people, talk to people, make sure that you have be social, just listen to people talk. And usually, this is my best tip, Usually the best ideas comes from just listening to people complain about their day, because if you can understand what people are actually saying when they're complaining, you very quickly realize what it is that they want.